Hello everybody, my name is Jamie and I am the Board Game Man. Today we're going to look at a card game that just came out last year in 2019. It's 2 to 5 players. It's called Mr. Rogers Game from Buffalo Games. The object of the game is you're trying to get sets of 3 character cards, and depending on how many sets you need is how many players that are in the game. In fact, here is one of the character cards right now. It's actually, I haven't even opened the cards yet, is Mr. Rogers himself. Woohoo! So let's head on over to the gamers table and I'll show you how to play. Alright everybody, welcome to the gamers table. Here are the contents of the Mr. Rogers neighborhood card game. Let me go over what you see here. First of all, we have the instruction booklet. This is actually nicely done. As you see inside, it has colored illustrations of all the different cards, all the different character cards, action cards, and it shows you how many cards you start off with depending on how many players you have in the game. And it does a really good job explaining all that good stuff. And then it shows the action cards, what each of them do, and all that good stuff. So this is a really good, really nicely done instruction booklet. You also have the game board, which is a simple piece of cardboard here. And all it really is it shows, I'll tell you about the trolley in a second, and then you put, this is like the draw pile, you put it on Mr. Rogers. That's all the board game you have there. You also have the character cards. Here are the character cards here. There's 16 different characters from the TV show, and some of these you might remember from watching. Obviously, Mr. Rogers is number 1. How you know that they're character cards is they have the numbers on the top of the cards. So you have Mr. Rogers, Mr. McFeely, you have Officer Clemens, Lady Elaine Fairchild, you have Lady Eberlin, Neighbor Aber, Handyman Negree, you have Queen Sarah Saturday, you have Prince Tuesday, definitely remember him, he used him a lot in the TV show. And Henrietta Pussycat, I remember seeing her quite a bit in there. Obviously, X the Owl is probably the most recognizable one, at least for me anyway, when I watch the show. Bob Dog, you have Donkey Hody, you have Cornflake S. Specially, I guess that's supposed to name. Chef Brockett, and then the last one is Harriet Elizabeth Cow. So those are all the characters that are in the game. You also have these action cards. These come into play, and I'll go over these in a moment. You have 5 stoplight cards, and each player will have one of these, and I'll show you what these are all about. You also have King Friday the 13th, and you definitely know him from the series. There's 3 of him, and then there's 2 of the Daniel Striped Tiger that are in the game. And there also, you got to have the trolley, which goes on the game board here. Okay, and then we also have, this is just a guide showing you how many cards you get to keep depending on how many cards you draw from other players, which I will go over that right now. Okay, so I'm going to show you the setup of the game. We're going to place the game board in the middle of the table. You're going to prepare the cards for play. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you, because like I said, it's 2 to 5 player game. We'll just do a little 3 player just to kind of show you how it works. So what you're going to do is you're going to look here in the booklet, and you'll see you'll have listed how many players and how many cards you keep in the set. So for a 2-player game and a 3-player game, obviously it is set of 1 through 12. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the characters numbers 13, 14, 15, and 16. You're going to go ahead and take these out of the deck, and that is for a 2- and 3-player game. Now you can see in the booklet here, if you have 4 players, you're going to use set 1 to 14, and then all 5, you're going to use every single card, 1 through 16. Now this will show you how many cards of each you'll keep. So obviously you're going to do 1 red light card for each player. As you can see there, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then it will depend on how many King Fridays you put in there and the Tiger. So we're going to do the 3-player game. So you're going to have 2, it looks like 2, let's see, 3 red lights, 2 King Fridays, and 1 Tiger. So Tiger and 2 King Fridays, there we go, for that game. And you'll put the rest in the box. Okay, and so on. So what you'll do is you're going to take these action cards, you're going to kind of mix them up and whatnot. Okay, you're going to mix these up. Each player will have one in their hand. Each player will have a stoplight. And depending on how many cards you start off with, is, let's see, is right here. Each player is going to start off with 5 cards, unless you have a 2-player game. If you have a 2-player game, each player starts off with 6 cards, not counting the action cards, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and deal these out. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you dealt out the 5 to each player. You're going to put the action cards right there, okay? Then you'll actually take the action cards, and each player will get 1. So we go 1, 1, and 1. And then each player will also get a stoplight in their card stash as well. 1, 1, and 1. And then the rest of the red lights go into the box. Okay? So now what's going to happen is, say it's player's 1 turn. Now, like I said, what you're trying to do in this game is you're trying to get sets of 3. Now, here is the back of the instruction booklet. As you said, it says winning the game. So if you have a number of players, we have 3 in this game, the number of sets of 3 you need in order to win is 4. And you can see there, if you have 2 players, it's 3 sets of 5. And then 4 or 5 players, you need just 3. We're going to do the 3, so you need 4 sets of 3. Excuse me. So how this game works is, say it's player's 1 turn, okay? Player 2 and player 3 are going to hold up their cards like a fan. Obviously, with the Mr. Rogers neighborhood facing you. Okay, you're going to hold like this. So player 1 is going to draw a card blindly. Okay, so say I pick this one from player 2. Now I can pick from player 2 or player 3. Either player, it doesn't matter. Let me bring this up just a little bit here. There we go. Okay, so player 2, say I go ahead and pick this from player 2. There's Lady Elaine Fairchild. So what I'm going to do is you're going to put it next to the game board. And you're going to line them up. So let's put this right here. Player 3's going over there. I'm going to stick it right here. Okay. Now I can choose from player 2's deck again, or I can choose one from player's 3. I'm going to go ahead and do one more from here. So say I pick this card here. Officer Clemens. So I'm good to go. So I got 2 in this line. Now let's say I'm going to go, you know what, I want to pick from player 3. So player 3 is going to fan out their cards like so. I'm going to start blindly choosing a card from their deck. Let's say I choose this one. Ooh, I choose Lady Elaine Fairchild. Once again, that's the second one. Okay. Now, I can continue to draw as many cards as I want. Okay. But if I draw the red light card, if I draw this, I lose all the cards that I lined up here, and I don't get to keep any for my neighborhood. So you got to be careful, because each player has one in their deck. So once you draw the red light card, you give it back to that player. That way it remains in their stack. Okay? And I would lose these 3. I would not be able to keep any of those in my neighborhood. Now let's say, for instance, I chose one more. Say I went to this and I chose another card, and I chose Henrietta Pussycat. Okay? So then I would have 4 down here. Now so let's just say I said, you know what, I'll stop. Okay? You were able to keep all the cards that you drew minus 2. Okay? So say I had 4 cards here. See, I drew 4 cards and I decided to stop. I can keep any 2 of them. And that's when this little card comes into play. But see, you drew 3 cards and you decide to stop, you get 1 card. 4 cards is 2 cards, 5 cards is 3 cards. So it's always minus 2, the amount that you drew. That's how many you get to keep in your neighborhood. So for instance, in this case, I think it's pretty obvious who I'm going to choose, the 2 cards I'm going to choose. It's probably going to be these 2, because I'm going for sets of 3. Okay? So player 2 is going to take these 2 cards and place them in front of them face up. So now other players know that you need 1 more to complete that set that you need. Okay? Now as players are drawing cards from all the different players, you always have to have that minimum amount of character cards in your hand. So for instance, if one player picked 3 or 4 cards out, you always got to go back to the minimum amount of character cards you have. So in a 2-player game, you must have 6 character cards at all times, a minimum, and then 5 if you're playing 3 to 5 players. So say they're picking cards left and right, and they end up getting 3 out of your stack. At the end of that turn, after he's done doing all of his drawing and whatnot, you're going to look and see how many character cards you have. And see, I have 3 here. Since we're in a 3-player game, we need a minimum of 5. So I'm going to go ahead and draw 2 more character cards. That way I have the minimum of 5 cards in my hand. And, like I said, and then these 2 can go on the bottom of the deck. Okay, so now it's player 2. Player 2, so obviously when it's player 2 turn, player 1's going to hold up their cards along with player 3. And you continue on this way. So say you draw a card, you're going to draw Handyman Negri, so you're going to put him there. You decide to draw another one. Oh, and you draw another one of him. Wow, that's 2. But you remember, you have to draw at least 3 to capture at least one of them. So I'm going to grab one more, and I grab Lady Elaine Fairchild. I can continue on if I wanted to. I'd probably want to do one more because that way I can snag these 2 if I wanted to. So say player 3 is going to go hold up their cards, and then he's going to say, okay, I want this one. Oh, look at that, 3. But unfortunately, I would have to draw one more card in order to grab all 3 of these. Say I want to do that, he picks this card, and it's Bob Dog. So now he goes, you know what, I want to stop. I'm going to go ahead and grab these 3 because he grabbed 5. Minus 2 is 3. So just like that, player 2 has a set of 3. And that's how that works. Now let me go over the action cards. These 2 would go over here in the discard pile. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? These, yeah, that would happen. Okay, now let me go over the action cards that we mentioned earlier. That shows right here. Okay, in the book. It's right in the middle of the booklet. Now, first and foremost, let me talk about the Mr. Rogers card. If a player draws a Mr. Rogers card from that player, say player 1 drew it from player 3 or player 2, he is a character card, so he does act as if you try to get a set of him, but there's a special thing you must do when you pick up one of his cards. If you draw a Mr. Rogers card from a player's hand, you must share something special with that player before placing it next to the game board. So for example, you have to give them a compliment, share words of encouragement if they're behind in the game, or just give them a hug. It's up to you. Oh, how sweet. So anyhow, so that's what you do when you draw a Mr. Rogers card. Okay. Now, let's go over these action cards. The action cards consist of, like I said earlier, okay, when you draw a Daniel Striped Tiger card, if you draw it from one of the other players, you actually get to choose whatever player you want to see their entire hand. So for instance, you say, I want player 2, I want to see your hand. So what they'll do is they'll take their cards and they'll show player 2 exactly what their hand is. Now you're not allowed to grab another action card. Okay, so you can't, like the King Friday here, you cannot grab an action card. You have to pick a character card in that deck. So you're actually able to look at that player's cards and say, okay, I want this one. And what you're going to do is you're going to lay that card down amongst the cards that you're going to draw later. Okay, and that's the power of the Daniel Striped Tiger, if you choose that. King Friday the 13th. If you draw him, you do not have to use it if you don't want to, but if you do, what you're going to do is you're going to say, player 3, do you have so-and-so? If player 3 does have it, then what you get to do is you add it in the line. So say, for instance, you say, player 3, do you have Henrietta Pussycat? If he does, he or she does, then you place it right along the line. If you don't, if you're incorrect and he says you have Officer Clemens and you don't have Officer Clemens, his turn ends, but he can still choose whatever cards that he can choose in the line. So unlike the red light card, when you get the red light card, your turn stops immediately and you don't get to pick any cards. That's it. You're done. Your turn is done. But the King Friday the 13th, your turn ends, but you still get to get cards out of your deck. So in this case, if you have 3 here, you were able to choose 1. Now let's discuss the good old Trolley Card. Here's the Trolley Card here. Now this card is triggered in the game in one of 2 areas. What happens is, let's say it is player 2's turn, and he grabs a card that is in another person's neighborhood. What happens is when he takes this, and he takes a player that's in somebody else's neighborhood, the trolley is activated. And what happens is with this, it gets placed into that player's hand. That did it. So this is player 2. He's going to put the trolley in his hand. Now when another player draws the card, He's going to place it amongst the drawn cards and takes somebody's character card in their neighborhood. Now the rules are very fuzzy when it comes to what kind of card you can take. It does not say anything about taking one from a person's completed set. It doesn't say that. So I guess you can house rule that, whether you want to say, no, you can't take it from a completed set, or you can. All the instructions say are, if you had drawn a trolley card from a player's hand, you place it with the other drawn cards next to the game board. Then you may choose one card from any player's neighborhood and place that card with the other drawn cards next to the game board. Then you continue your turn as normal. So that's up to you whether you want to make that rule or not. But according to the rule book, it doesn't say you can't take it from a completed completed set. So it's up to you. So that is one of the triggered areas. The second one is if a player has two sets here and begins a third set. Once that player begins a third set, then the trolley is triggered once again, and the same thing happens. The player holds it in their hand, the player draws it, whoever gets the card does the same thing. So it's one of two ways, and it actually gets triggered twice, whatever is done on the first time. And that is, you draw a character card that someone else has in their neighborhood, or you're starting a third set. Okay, and now we're heading to the end of the game. And you can see on the back here, it shows the number of players, how many sets of 3 you need. And in this game, in a 3-player game, you need 3 sets of 4, or 4 sets of 3, I should say. And the first player to complete their 4th set in a 3-player game wins it.